doing this. There's been a lot of citizen involvement. A lot of you have been involved for the last 2-3 years in kind of ramping up to this level of actually getting the grant. So today we've got Rick Tippett. Rick is the director of the Trinity County Department of Transportation, and he's the executive secretary for the Trinity County Transportation Commission. So like I said, the commission is the one that actually received the grant, so he's going to be talking about the grant. I want to introduce just a couple other people here, though. That a lot of you know that there's been a multi-agency committee that's been kind of framing the scope of work, doing a lot of presentations. You may have heard from some of them over the last few years. It's called the UpState California Rail Connect Committee. It's made up of several agencies, and we have some of the representatives here today. Marion Brady, council member from the city of Eureka. You recall City of Eureka was really the one that kind of took a lot of citizen input and said, yeah, why wouldn't we want to study this? You know, this is an intriguing idea. Redevelopment's gone. We're looking for ways to grow our community. Why wouldn't we just look to get some good information? City of Eureka jumped in and really kind of spearheaded this. We've also got Nick Angeloff. Look at that, Nick represents the Northern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. They represent tribes over here on the coast and over in the Sacramento Valley. So it's a very appropriate thing. Again, been here since the beginning. And John Fenley, where's John? John Fenley. John is actually he's a Trinity County supervisor, and he's actually the chair of the UpState Rail Connect Committee. So, without any more introduction, I'd like to introduce Rick Tippett.
Thank you for having me. My wife says I'm not obnoxious, so I'll speak without a microphone. If anybody can't hear me, raise your hand, let me know. Speak louder. Trinity County is a little bit different than Humboldt County. We have a transportation commission in every county, but in Humboldt we have incorporated cities. So what you have when that happens is you have a member from each city and then a couple members from the board, and that forms the Transportation Commission. In Trinity County, we have no incorporated cities, so the Board of Supervisors is the Transportation Commission. So that's why I answered direct to the Board of Supervisors and why Trinity County DOT runs the Transportation Commission. So I kind of wear two hats a lot of times, flipping it around. It's kind of nice because when I want a project, I don't have to compete with anybody. We get to decide and move forward. Anyways, my name is Rick Tippett. Also in Trinity, I'm the airport director, the planning director, the building official, and a bunch of other things. Come from Cal Poly about 25 years ago and been in consultant for the first few years and then been in public government since then, both on the city side and on the county, and I've been with Trinity for the last 7 years. About a year ago, one of my supervisors came to me and asked me about applying for a feasibility study, and I knew this was going through Trinity. And I'll be honest with you, my first comment when I heard that there was a railroad going through Trinity was, wow, we're going to have the longest tunnel in California, maybe in the world. It's going to go under Trinity. But then I understood that there's a lot more to it, and that there's different things that have to be analyzed and different things that have to be evaluated. So it became very obvious to me that this was going to be very important to Trinity to be involved, so that we could see how the project moved forward, and that we would be at the table to help it progress and see what we're doing. So we get opportunities as we go along. Some is called TIGER grants. We had a Sustainable Communities grant, just different grants that come along, and a non-governmental agency such as the Land Bridge Alliance or the Rail Connect Committee cannot apply for this money, but government can. And so the Department of Transportation has an opportunity to apply for this money, but can get assistance from other groups in the community. So we had a Sustainable Communities grant. We did apply for it 2 years ago, and we're not successful. but the people at CalTrans had some things that they liked about it and said, we'll help you with the next application, which they did, put it in, and then just recently, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we found out we were successful. So, I want to quickly go over some important things about this project. First of all, the objective is to complete the feasibility study. That's something everybody wants to have, is they want to have the feasibility study. And the purpose is to determine the feasibility of establishing new rail that connects the port to Central Valley. And then it also will connect on into the national rail system. Goals from the county, goals from me personally, is that this report is factual, it's transparent, and it's inclusive. To get there, I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a report or study to prove that the line is feasible. I don't want to say, oh, I want to build a railroad line, so I'm going to write a report that shows it's feasible. That's not the way we're doing this. The way we're doing this is that we're doing a study to determine where the railroad is feasible to construct. So we're starting out in a very neutral position. We don't know whether it is or not. And the hope is that when we get done, we either show that this is feasible or we show that it isn't. But we are starting out with a blank slate and letting the things that are important drive the report to where it goes. So it means as it started out, we start out neutral, let the facts bring the project to a conclusion. So ultimately, we know that there will be a lot, we do know and we'll acknowledge up front that there's going to be a group, I don't know which group, but someone's not going to be happy about the results, but we'll accept the conclusion because they know it's based on factual, transparent, and inclusive facts. So if we involve everybody, we take all the information and we really try to make it a community document and a factual document that down the road people will say, well, I didn't like it, I maybe don't agree with it, but I know it was done correctly. And that goes a long ways later on when you're trying to get something through. At the end, the study is the first leap, and it's a big leap because it actually will show where we were at with it. It doesn't build the railroad, it just simply provides the objective information on the potential of an east-west line, and that what it really is, it becomes a document that is a policy decision-making document for both government and private sector, for investments or investments in public money to build it. I kind of compared it the other day. We're sitting at the bottom of the hill, and it takes 5 gallons of gasoline in there, and you've got money to go to the store, you got money to get to the top of the hill. So you kind of want to decide to get to the top of the hill. This is where you think about, do you want to do it or not, or do you want to go another approach? This is the point where you make big decisions about where you want to go, and then we move forward. If it's determined to be feasible, then we go into the next step, which is the environmental phase. And I like to say that we're going to have an environmental phase. We'll have a paper pile that will go from the floor to the ceiling to analyze it. And that will be very, very in-depth and will take a considerable amount of time and a lot of study. This is just to figure out, is it worth investing those millions of dollars to prepare that study, and then the next millions of dollars, if it's found environmentally feasible, to prepare the design and then go into construction. The amount of money that it's going to take to go to construction is well beyond the means of Trinity County, well beyond the means of even a lot of the groups that are in this. And it's something that's going to be involving federal government and state government, but to have a good feasibility study and to have it based on facts, inclusive, and factual, makes it easier to get the funding later on, because then the people that are also making those funding decisions understand why you got there and trust the information that you're providing. Kind of the best way I like to describe it is we're in the middle of the beginning of this process. The beginning of the beginning was actually coming up with the dream and coming up with some of the pre-studies that we had. Now we're into the really, is this worth it? Do we want to go? And if it is at the end, then the next stage will be trying to form the JPAs and the different things we need to do to go forward from there. Just real quick, as I mentioned, it's made up of a grant program, strategic partnerships, and the state highway account. The grant titles, the UpState California Rail Connect Feasibility Study. We were the applicant from the Transportation Commission. We got $126,000 in state highway funds, $150,000 in FHWA strategic partnership funds, and $69,000 match. So we have a total project amount of $345,000 to prepare this report. Responsible parties, the project manager grant recipient is the Transportation Commission. And we'll be providing oversight with input from the California, or from the multi-agency UpState Rail Connect Committee. And that makes up the 3 counties that are affected by it, and then Eureka, and some of the tribes and some of the other people associated. Again, inclusive. We want to bring everybody to the table to talk about this, because we're going to have some important metrics that have to be formed to help us make that ultimate decision. Again, the nonprofit Land Bridge Alliance will be responsible for providing the matching funds to help the report. A lot of that's going to be in-kind labor. We have to do a lot of presenting outside of the county. Easy for me to set up a library in Trinity, but when I start to go to Eureka and Humboldt, I don't want to deal with that. So the Land Bridge Committee will be responsible for setting up the places to hold the public meetings, getting the coffee warmed up, getting the chairs set up, and things like that, so that we can move this forward. One thing also I don't have anywhere on here, but I want to mention, this work will be contracted out. The county is going to find, the way California law is you have to hire the best contractor that's available to do that type of work. And that's going to be really important here. And by the way, my phone's rang off the hook for the last couple of weeks from people all over this country looking for what's going on with this project. Because this project, I was mentioning to someone else the other day, I typed in new rail alignment feasibility study, and guess what pops up? It only pops up. So, new railroad alignments from beginning to end are not common in the United States anymore. Essentially everything's been built out, and what you have is feasibility studies to look at, do we want to reinitiate the line that was already there? So this has a lot of interest, and I expect to see the big players coming in to participate and possibly get the job to do this. And I'm talking big players like HDR and AMCOM and a couple of the different really big companies that deal with high-speed rail, rail lines that are in the billions of dollars, multi-billions of dollars. So we have the interest of a lot of very large, high-quality railroad folks to do this study. So anyways, so one of the key milestones, just a minute, let me make sure I didn't miss something. Okay, one of the key milestones is the May 17, 2017 completion date for award. I have to have this contract awarded by May 17th. And for you guys in government, you know that's pretty soon. There's a lot of processes we have to go through, and I'll talk about them here in a few minutes. But we have to go through each one of those processes to get to awarding that project. And so a lot of times when you get federal money or you get a grant, you have a little bit of time to think about it, like a highway safety improvement program or a state transportation improvement project. Those can get 5 to 7 years. They're looking on this one to be done here in 3 years and 3 months. So it's get your butt in gear and get out the door and get it done. Oh, sorry. So we have to move very fast on it. We have to have the report actually done in less than 3 years and have all the money asked for after that. So our timelines are very tight, and we have to keep it moving very good. So to get to the award, there's some things that I have to do, and one of them One of them is that our transportation committee has a work plan every year that we go off of, and I have to, in order to spend money, I have to revise that work plan. Then I need to also finish up, we had a charter to apply for this grant, and part of the charter said if we got the grant, we were going to enter into an MOU with the Land Bridge Alliance so that the matching funds and the responsibilities were better defined. And so we're going to be working on that here. I just started last week kind of with the draft of it, but we'll be working together with that, and hopefully we'll kind of have it towards something final in October so we can discuss it at the October meeting. We officially have to accept the grant, which means I have to do a resolution to the board and get the Transportation Commission, get the Transportation Commission to say, wow, great, yeah, thanks, we're going to take the money and we're going to make the study happen. And then we also have to work on the scope of work, which is we're going to talk about the draft scope of work, and it's kind of the preliminary draft. But it's another thing that if we have some edits, I'd like to talk about when the Land Bridge Committee or the UpState Rail Committee gets together again in October. Then once we have that scope of work, we're also going to kind of be working concurrently, is we've got to craft a request for qualifications. We plan on being done probably around the end of October, November, and we'll put it out on the street, and that will circulate probably for about 2 months, and then we'll get a bunch of packets back, and then we have to go through, we have to read all the packets. We'll set up a committee to rank them, and then we usually interview the top 2 or 3 folks and select a consultant. Again, I'm hoping that we have that consultant selected sometime in January, February, so that we're ahead of the March deadline. So that's what's on our table today. Now let's start talking about, or we'll talk about what we're starting after we get the contract going. But the UpState Rail Committee's task is they help assist us with review and edits to the scope of work. They're going to assist us with crafting the RFQ. They'll also be involved with the consultant submittal and ranking, and then they'll organize the public outreach for project consultants and assist as necessary. And like one of the things that is necessary is we need to get all the reports and all the studies and everything that's been done around here all into one place to give to the consultant. I know some of the things that are going on, but you guys here in Humboldt have a lot longer history, a lot better knowledge than I have. So those are the things that we're going to be looking to everybody for, is that history, that knowledge of what's going on, so that we don't start off trying to figure out right from the beginning. We take everything and compile it together and end up all that much more ahead. So going through the scope of work, I want to point out this is not necessarily in order. A lot of these tasks, some will move forwards faster than others, some will kind of happen at the end. But we have a project kickoff, the consultant selection, which are 2 we talked about. The first big one will be literature review and identification of proposed routes. That's essentially putting everything together and looking at what we have. We have land ownership, economic feasibility, or forecasting, which includes assessment of potential, market potential, direct, indirect, induced beneficiaries, and also we'll probably also have to look at the people that are impacted. Assessment of the impact of ports. And then we get down into the important part, which is the feasibility analysis. And one of the things that's going to be big on this is we're going to create a list of economic, social, political, environmental things that we want to weigh. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign values to that. It's about whether it's, you know, if it's at this level, it's feasible. If it's at this level, it might not be feasible. But we're going to put all that together. We're going to weigh each one of them so that we can end up with a matrix at the end that tells us, based on all the information that we have all put together, this is where it is. Either it's going to be feasible, or it's not going to be feasible, or quite frankly, it might be right in the middle. We don't know. I'm setting out right now with a blank slate. I don't know, but putting all this together will give us that answer. Task 6.2 is report on the conceptual analysis and drawings. Just kind of on the routes, report the assessment of benefits for alternative rail routes for meeting or improving the national and state security needs. List of additional uses for potential rail corridors ranked by estimated cost, income, contacts, and special conditions. Detail the permitting needs, environmental issues and mitigations, cultural resources, and development costs and timelines. So it's a lot of things that are going to go into this. It's not going to be just about, is this affordable and is someone going to make money? No, because we gotta analyze all the other impacts and all the other benefits and make sure that it's feasible at the end. So then again, we have task 7, which is public outreach, and I talked about that where I'm expecting Land Bridge to help. And then at the very end, we got to put it all together and have a report, and we got fiscal management. So why does Trinity County care? You know, we don't have the port, so a lot of folks are like, well, why are we involved? Well, good governance begins with being open to new ideas and having potential improvements to social and economic quality of life for the citizens. So, you know, we have a political idea of doing something. The citizens want to know, well, is that idea really a good idea? And that's one of the things that the study does. It's intended to provide that unbiased information, going back to factual, inclusive, which are the goals of the report. And then for us, one of the important things is we're in the middle of any of this route. Most of this route is going to be in Trinity County. So we want to be at the table to ensure that the Trinity County citizens are well represented. You know, our concern would have been, let's say that we had a private entity come and say, well, we'll fund the feasibility study. And then they're writing a feasibility study from the standpoint of proving the railroad's feasible. Well, they might not get a whole lot of input from Trinity. This way, you guys are going to have to listen to us. So it's really important to us that we do have a seat at the table, and this is where we're there to help form or shape what is going to come out. While Trinity County has been somewhat involved, it doesn't have a long history with the harbor or its goals. And what I mean by that is, we kind of haven't really been involved with everything that's gone on in the past, and quite frankly, we don't know a lot of what's gone on in the past. So it kind of gives us an unbiased approach right from the get-go, so that we can base it on the evidence that is presented to us by all the different groups when we go to do the report. So Trinity County is coming out kind of as an unbiased interest, and not someone that's set at the beginning of it or at the end of it, which is again, back to the goals. And then finally, or not finally, but another one is we want to make sure that it's within Trinity County's values, our image, and our goals that are continue to be protected. And when I talk about goals, I talk about land use and things that the county strives to be. And then finally, any of you ever done a federal aid project, it's really easy to get yourself into trouble. And when you get yourself into trouble, you got to repay your grant. And so our job is to make sure that we provide the oversight and expertise in administering federal aid and state aid funded projects. We have done this many times before, so we know all the reports, all the forms that need to be filled out, all the different things that need to be in your contracts to keep us from having bad results at the end and having problems where the feds are not happy and they'd like to see some of their money back because you didn't follow their procedure. And that's probably one of the big factors as to why they don't like to send it out to non-governmental agencies. They like to have the governmental agencies deal with it. We personally don't like to deal with federal aid projects if they're under $100,000 because it is a lot of work. So again, we have the project kickoff. Project kickoff will come after we get the resolution over to CalTrans, and they send us a letter. It's called a notice to proceed. We got to call it E76, but anyways, they're going to send us a letter to say, okay, we acknowledge your project, you've accepted the grant, move forward, and when that happens, that turns the money on and we can start spending it. Right now, we're working under some local transportation funds to get us to where we can get the grant put together to get it out and get it moving. Next step, which is one I talked about, is selecting a consultant. We have a bunch of things on that, but the Rail Connect Committee will be participating in that, but at the end, we'll select a team, and then we'll contract with the team, which has to be done in March. And so once we get the team, then we start the ball rolling. First thing is and again, this is the draft scope, but the first thing is that we'll look at the information and the studies that have been done by public and private sources relevant to the examination of the feasibility of alternative rail routes connecting Humboldt Bay to the National Rail System in Sacramento Valley. There's a lot of information out there about this. And what we want to do is we want to get the consultant to collect all that information and summarize it so that we have it available and we understand what's out there. And yes, I will acknowledge up front that there's going to be conflicting information in there, but if we have it all in there and it's all inclusive and it's all stated and it's all documented, people will know that at least it was considered. And that's really important in these type of processes, that things are considered. Then task 3.2 is we have the 3 routes, and and we're going to be looking a little bit harder at that. It's defined as geographical depiction areas connecting the Western Pacific Rail Line and Humboldt Bay region, connecting the main line, Class 1 Railroad in Sacramento Valley areas. The areas that we have these swaths that are going through. A lot of times you don't know exactly whether the rail's going to be at the bottom of the hill or the top of the hill, so you kind of paint a big line through there and say in general this is where the railroad's going to go. So you can start analyzing some of the impacts you have, because there's a lot of things that you can determine that be close by to that. And some of the things that we're going to be looking at is the number of tunnels and bridges, ways to minimize it. One of the important things is minimizing the environmental impacts to the project. A lot of pre-planning will help you out down the road. If you see things, if you hit a critical watershed or different things like that, there's things that you can do to help you later on get through that process. Then we got things like the grade, the track geometry, and minimal disruption to the communities along the route. I know that the part that I'm not sure how much the feasibility study is going to get into, but there is the issue of, does the rail go through Eureka or does it go down the peninsula? And I think we're going to have some further discussion about that, but from the county standpoint right now, it's from Eureka to the valley. And that's what we're really concentrating on, is that particular part. So again, literature reviews, draft literature review report, and proposed routes and alternatives. And then we have an evaluation of land. And one of the things is we're going to collect a list of parcels that are within the rail routes and within a quarter mile on each side of it, or sorry, eighth of a mile. It'll include parcel numbers, acreage, and zoning, include any overlays. We'll also try to identify encumbrances that could be problematic. Somewhere out there in South County floats this 24-inch high-pressure natural gas line. Well, we don't want to put the railroad on top of it, so those are things that we want to watch out for. But we need to be careful about this, because this task, we have to be very sensitive to CEQA and NEPA. And those are your environmental reporting requirements that you have. And what you can't end up into is talking about values and property owners, because then what it looks like is you could be buying you know, encouraging a property owner to settle because he's going to make a bunch of money. You can't do that before your environmental phase is done. You have to do your environmental phase without any negotiations on property, without any offers, without any implied values or anything. So you, in NEPA and CEQA, you have to be real careful about what you do, but you can look at what the land is, what it's used for, and the general value of that land in the swath from point A to point B. Okay, then we go into task 5, which is economic forecast. And so those are things like shipping trends, commodity categories that might benefit or be attracted should the railroad exist. Examine job creation, property value increase, and that's property values that increase because of the availability of having new transportation to it. There are going to be some properties that don't increase. You know, building a railroad next to your house is maybe not going to bring the value of your house up. So you know, there's things that's all going to be considered in there. Construction jobs, I'll multiply other beneficiaries to the region, extending from Humboldt Bay to Nevada border and extending from Medford down to Oroville. And also we'll look at examine trade, economic and political impacts of the ports, and we've got a list of ports up there. And you know, we might even add a few or take a few out. But again, this is the beginning of the scope, and so we're kind of still, it's a little bit fluid as we're going to establish, but pretty close to what we were aiming for. And what we'll end up with is a report, an assessment of market potential, indirect benefactors, and I also want to add in there that we are going to talk about some of the detractors in there too in 5.2. And then an assessment of the impact of the ports. So we kind of have, you know, we make sure we talk about the economic part. Then we get into the feasibility analysis. And as I mentioned, you have the economic stuff, now you start to get into the social, political, environmental, all the other factors that you need to consider so that you put together a report that measures everything, not just one particular thing, and tells you this is going to work or it's not. So again, we're going to develop the metrics of pros and cons for the alternative rail lines, being owned by public entities, owned by private entities, owned by public-private, include similar analysis of railroad operations. So, you know, we also have to consider O&M in this. But we're going to spend a lot of time making sure that we have that metrics that's going to measure our values. And then we start populating it with, you know, the identification of proposed tunnels, lanes, construction materials, essentially determining what the cost is. You know, other things like, is the train going to be electric? You know, we had some preliminary discussion. Someone said it'd be real nice to have, you know, to think a little bit progressive on this and not think just diesel. So those are the things that are going to be looked at. And then other things such as construction issues, access, the proposed speed of trains are they going to be fast enough for what UP is looking for, and then includes structural connections with Northwest Pacific Railroad project or railroad, and UP